Sonic 1 was ported to the Game Boy Advance. This version is titled Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis. It's quite infamous in the Sonic community as one of the worst Sonic releases ever. It's trying to be like Sonic 1, but the physics don't work correctly, the music is badly done, and it's just not a good version of the game in any way. Playing this game does not give you the same experience as playing actual Sonic 1, and that means it's not doing a very good job at being Sonic 1 like it was ostensibly trying to be. The main problem is with the way Sonic moves and behaves. The momentum in this version just doesn't work correctly. Bumping into a wall, something that would usually bring anyone to a screeching halt, doesn't do that to Sonic. The moment there's no longer a wall in the way, Sonic will just speed off with the same momentum as before. You can't just copy and paste the level design from Sonic 1 and then expect your game to be Sonic 1 if you don't also make it behave like Sonic 1 in the first place. The weird physics and momentum and random slowdowns are so off-putting in the GBA version that even a simple obstacle can become a nightmare to traverse through. Just compare. Slope terrain is supposed to be challenging to stay on, as Sonic should naturally gain downwards momentum while slipping down the slope. Well, not here. The slope's just as groundy as any ground. Areas that once used slopes to keep Sonic's momentum steady just don't work in this version. Okay, now I want to show you something cool. This is one of my favourite shortcuts from Sonic 1. Alright, so right at the start of Spring Yard, you can launch up here, but instead of going right, go left. You'll find Speedy Shoes. And with the boost from the shoes, you'll be able to launch over this wall. This skips the slow moving block parts of Spring Yard, which are always a bit of a pain to traverse through. It's a good trick, because it relies on finding a secret and then using that discovery to your advantage a little later on, and the result is a really sweet skip. This might be one of my favourite little interactions that's possible in Sonic 1. Now, let's look at Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis. Does this little trick work there? I mean, the answer is obviously no. And not for the reason you might think. It's okay, maybe it's not possible to go off screen like that in this version, or maybe the shoes don't add enough speed to launch Sonic high enough, or what could the reason be? Well, the truth is, it's even stupider than that. You can't even try the skip in the first place. This spring doesn't launch you high enough to even reach the Speedy Shoes. The platform's still there, but I have never once managed to reach it. This game literally has a bonus power-up that cannot be reached. You see, the level design was originally created around the game's controls and physics. If you make the physics different, but keep the level design the same, then how can you expect to end up with a functioning game at all? The special stages don't work correctly either. You're not supposed to be able to just infinitely trigger the same R switch just by sitting there. And everything just feels so off, like Sonic speeds up and slows down at random. I don't get it. And the music in this version is not good. I think they even got the melody wrong in Spring Yard's theme. Take a listen. Okay, you see, here's Sonic 1 for the Nintendo DS. This version, while certainly not ideal either, is still Sonic 1 at its heart. It behaves like a Sonic 1, it sounds like a Sonic 1, it can do the Speedy Shoes trick in Spring Yard, just like any old Sonic 1 should be able to do, you know? Despite being a bit worse for wear, this is the bona fide Sonic 1. This DS version feels like they took Sonic 1 and tried to cram it in a DS. There are a few compromises with the sound and the frame rate, but it's still the same base piece of software, just made to work on a different platform. It didn't need to completely reinvent the laws of physics for no reason. The GBA version, though, feels like they had a quick look at Sonic 1, took all the art assets from it, composed new approximations of the Sonic 1 soundtrack, tried their best to mimic the physics programming from the first game, and then just kind of assembled it all into something that resembles Sonic 1, yet doesn't have anything to do with the original at all. And they didn't even do a good job at that. Look at how Sonic's looking up sprite doesn't even align with his standing sprite, and look at how the camera doesn't stop at the correct point here, allowing players to see the unfinished terrain that would normally always be off screen. And look at how they accidentally put the springs on upside down. Seriously, how does something like that even happen? Whatever this thing is, it isn't Sonic 1. It's its own thing. Its own curiosity of a game. It's another Sonic-branded relic to add to the pile of Sonic-related ridiculousness that Sega has been carefully and lovingly handcrafting for us since 1991. Incidentally, Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis was released on the same day as the even more infamous Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. That was quite a day for Sonic, wasn't it? But wouldn't you believe it, this isn't the only poor Sonic port for GBA. There's this other thing, Sega Smash Pack. If you had a microscope, you might even be able to see which games are included here. Alright, so there's Golden Axe, Echo the Dolphin, and Sonic Spinball. When presented with a menu like this, I'm sure all three options are bad choices in their own way, but let's have a look at Sonic for now. It sure looks like Spinball, and as far as I can tell, the playability is actually fairly accurate to Sonic Spinball. You know, assuming for a moment that Spinball even has any playability to begin with. The screen is so zoomed in this version. The only reason I know where to go is that I'm already familiar with the stage layouts, but if I were playing this for the first time, I'd feel so claustrophobic and lost. In this part of stage 3, is it clear what you need to do? In the Mega Drive version, it's much more obvious that you need to launch into one of these gaps, you know, because we can actually see the gaps. You can press select to hide the display panel thing, which gives you a tiny bit more screen space, but it's still not enough to alleviate the problem. I personally only noticed one inconsistency with the gameplay. Usually after defeating a Robo-Boiler head, you should just be able to jump back in and get the next one, but that didn't work here. I had to wait a while for them to come back. Other than that, I didn't see any other inaccuracies. I didn't beat this version though, so who knows. There are also some graphical mistakes here and there, such as objects that are clearly meant to be background instead behaving as foreground. But for the most part, this is Sonic Spinball. But don't let all that fool you, this is definitely still a shoddy port that didn't care about the source material. This time, the huge problems are with the music and sound effects. They're terrible and absent, and by that I mean most of the sounds and music are missing, and what isn't missing just sounds really bad. There's no boss music. And the bonus stages and options menu are completely silent. And worst of all 4 levels just use level 1's music. But this music, you know how at the beginning of the game Sonic jumps out of the water with a splash? Turns out that wasn't a sound effect, it's just how the music starts. Listen to when it loops. You'll hear for a brief moment there's the title screen theme and then the splash sound effect, integrated into the music. What's up with that? So there is no real reason to play Sega Smash Pack's version of Spinball. It isn't different enough on a fundamental level to be worth looking at, like Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis is. It's just worse. And for a game like Spinball that's already annoying enough to play as it is, you're really better off playing one of the other versions. Or better yet, play some Psycho Pinball. You see, according to itself, Psycho Pinball is the finest pinball game to grace the Mega Drive. No arguments, no competition. So really, I had no choice but to recommend it. There's just no argument. It also has 3-ball action. Sonic only sometimes has 3-ball action. So, as you can see, Sonic on the DS is also bad in its own unique way.